the usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a beautiful, cold Monday morning as we speak. There has been slight drizzles in some parts of Kampala this morning as we speak. But I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope you've been blessed with what you deserve and what you've been praying for. And I hope you do have a great new month, a wonderful new week as well. So do join us this morning in this conversation as we digest the latest from the world of football. Last night, apologies on the echoes that we did experience in the start of last night's podcast. Nonetheless, thanks to that alert from LFC, we managed to correct that. So allow me have our audios tested and make sure everything does check out properly well. But for those of you that have been, tuning into the channel, watching all our lives and all our content, thank you so much for, giving us your time, your precious time to be with us every single morning, every single night as we go through these discussions, these multiple discussions. Like you all know it, we do come live at 9 a.m. every single morning, Monday to Friday, and every single night, 11 p.m., Monday to Thursday, and on Fridays, we tend to come a bit earlier, around 9 p.m., and then on Saturday mornings, we do as well come at 11 p.m. Sorry, Saturday night, we do come at 11 p.m., and in the morning, we come around 11 a.m. So take note of those time adjustments, respectively, as you be part of this Football Tribe UG community. Otherwise, to all our new subscribers and the usual suspects, we thank you so much. You are the fuel that keeps us going. You are the motivation that keeps us, hooked on this ride as we take things, to the next step. Been working towards a couple of things, and I hope as content stability in terms of it's going to be better, and our audio, it's one of those things I've been working up on. I do, but we'll see in the next coming days. Let me not make any big promises before nothing is delivered just yet, but we expect some improvements, at least in our audio quality and things like that, among other things. And God willing, even our video quality will improve going forward. If we can be blessed with a sort of a new, better phone, I'd hope that if resources permit, I would get maybe an iPhone 14 Pro Max or 13 Pro Max. But it's not been possible at the moment. But we will see. We won't give up. We won't give up, on that aspiration as well. Anyways, today we will be discussing why Arsenal are boring. It's been one of those hot topics that some people seem not to, let go of. And I do not think it's a hot topic because it deserves to be, but I feel it's a bit of nitpicking, and we're going to be digesting that. And then, but before we get to the Arsenal, let's start things off with with the FIFA World Cup Under-17 that tournament is set to kick off in Qatar. It's going to be hosted in Qatar. A total of 48 teams will be a total of 48 teams will be competing for the the crownship, hoping to dethrone the reigning champions. That is hoping to crown the reigning champions. That's Germany, who won the competition in 2023. And among those teams that are hoping to do that is our very own Uganda Cubs. Yes, our very own Uganda Cubs in participation of that tournament. That's the Under-17. Not an easy tournament. It's not going to be a walkover for any team that seeks to win it, because you have to go through the whopping 48 teams. As you all remember, the World Cup was expanded from 32 teams to 48 teams. So that means we get to watch more games. And perhaps will that increase on the competition? or will it dilute on the level of competition? We do not know. We will wait to see what comes up of that. I cannot tell you that I'll be watching every single game, but if any of them I do chance upon them, then I'll give it the time. But most probably, we may start following critical things at a certain stage as the tournament advances there. So yeah, we'll be bringing you the updates from that side as well, in as far as the tournament is concerned. But in fact, it does kick off. The group stages do kick off today, starting at until the 11th of November. Then the round of 32 will be played on the 14th and 15th of the same month. Then 3 days later, we'll have the round of 16 and then the quarterfinals, because the tournament in itself has to climax within a period of 3 weeks, essentially, or at least slightly under a month, because the third place playoff and the final will be played on the November 27th. So begin to pick up on that. Uganda are in Group K, so I thought I should. They are in the same group with the likes of Canada. So let me try and fetch out that and see if I can bring you some of the perhaps group stages that you ought not to miss up on, that you ought not to miss. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm struggling. I don't know. I'd said that piece somewhere, but for some reason, it seems to have gone missing. Yes. Okay, here it is. So Uganda in the same group with France, with Chile, Canada, there. So 4 teams in that group K. Of course, France are one of the tournament favorites, as we all know. They are capable of going very, very far in tournaments. Then Portugal is one of the other teams that are favorites, being the reigning champions of the Euro under 27. Sorry, the Euro under 17, following their crownship in June this year. So they're one of the favorites. Then Brazil, I think, who are seeking to win the competition, I think for a record 50th time. So are also one of the favorites that you need to look out for. Germany, ever since winning the title in 2023, have sort of gone under the radar. They had the disappointing performance at the Euros 2024. So that was in June. And then Mexico is one of those teams that you should be looking out to. Argentina and Italy, you should give them some food for thought. But according to some online sources, they say Uzbekistan and Saudi Arabia could be some of the dark horses that you should expect in this tournament. So yeah. Then Morocco from the African continent, having won the Under-17 AFCON, will be one of the teams to perhaps look out for in this tournament. So, but let's see. South Africa are in Group A with Qatar, the hosts, Italy and Bolivia. Then let's see, Portugal are in with a New Caledonian, Morocco and Japan. So Morocco are in Group B. Then Senegal and Group C, alongside Croatia, Costa Rica, United Arab Emirates, then Tunisia and Group D. That's as far as Africa concerned. And Group D has Fiji, Belgium, and Argentina. Egypt in Group E, where you have England, Venezuela, and Haiti. Then Cote d'Ivoire in Group F, where you have Mexico, the Republic of Korea, that's South Korea, and then Switzerland. Then okay. Then I'm looking for Zambia. Zambia in Group H with Indonesia, Honduras, and Brazil. But Group G in between there has Germany, Colombia, Korea, DPR, wow, and then El Salvador. Then Burkina Faso are in Group I, where you have USA, Tajikistan, and Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic. Then Group J has Paraguay, Uzbekistan, Panama, and the Republic of Ireland, while Group L has Mali, New Zealand, Austria, and Saudi Arabia. So those are some of the group That's how the groups look like in as far as the Under-17 World Cup is concerned. We will see how far the Uganda Cups can go in as far as uh, and all I can say is that we will see how as far as they can go. Anyways, let's leave the Under-17 World Cup and then go to Arsenal, and go to Arsenal and see, and see what's going to happen there or what has been happening there. But before we go deep into Arsenal, Arsenal's own loaner midfielder, that's Fabio Vieira, has so far now received 2 red cards uh, while appearing for Hamburg. And that reminds me, there's a time he was substituted on, I think when Arsenal were playing up against Burnley, and he received a red card. His, the first time is a mistake, second time coincidence, third time that becomes, a trend. So he seems to be reckless with his challenges. He seems to be very, very reckless with his challenges, and he will need to improve. He will need to work on that to be a better person. He will need to be a better person, a much, much better person in that. So let's go to the gist of today's conversation. Why are Arsenal boring? I come to discuss this topic because it's been overly discussed in mainstream media. For those of you that follow football enough, I've seen people praise, those sort of lazy, I'll call them lazy arguments on Talk Sport. I've seen those slurs and subtle, allegations with Sky Sport. You'll find them on multiple podcasts and things like that. And let's put questions or try to dig deeper and think deeper in as far as this whole Arsenal boring thing is concerned. How do they become boring? What causes them to become boring? What can they do better is it even their responsibility to be entertaining to the test that you possibly want? And I've said this before, and without any fear of contradiction whatsoever, and I will repeat it, is that it will matter less if Arsenal win the Premier League title at the end of the season, if they go through all their remaining 28 games, winning 1-0. It will matter less. What will have mattered is that at the end of the day, they managed to get it over the line and won a Premier League title for the first time since 2004. That's in 22 years. That's what will matter the most. Then again, it's going to be very, very important. And why are they suddenly boring? I do not know how far back you need to go in history to say that Arsenal were boring in terms of playing football. I think you need to go back to the George Graham era. That is before Arsene Wenger comes in September 1996. Of course, I think his first game came in October, around that period, October 1996. I think you need to go back to the George Graham era for you to remember this being perhaps a discussion that Arsenal boring. And because it was totally a different era and a different century in itself, where the internet was still a new thing, where during the appointment of Arsene Wenger, Arsenal players were saying, Arsene who? The media wrote that. They were Googling to find out who this guy is, who had been at AS Monaco and then left, French football at the height of the Olympique Marseille, corruption scandals, where following, I think Monaco had, for 2 subsequent seasons, had finished second. Of course, he won Monaco in his debut season, a championship after 6 years without winning it. And then he went on to Nagoya Grampus in Japan, which is where he left to come to Arsenal and spent a whooping 2 decades there and an extra 2 years. So really, in the period of Arsene Wenger, you never had anything to do with boring Arsenal. Why? They were very entertaining. Arsene Wenger's approach to football was a free mind. And he says He said, and I quote, if you overdrill the players, then you lose their creativity. And I think we've seen that in modern day football, especially when it comes to structured football. We've seen that limit players. Now, some managers have done it in a manner that still allows players to be creative, to be their natural self. I'll give an example of Pep Guardiola through his time at Barcelona. While he drilled his team in literally micromanaging every detail of the game, the one person he did not micromanage was Lionel Messi. And he did not. And because he did not do that on him, Lionel Messi was still creative. He was still the natural raw himself. No, and that's why people got to love him. The other example I can draw on is, but still I could make a case against Pep Guardiola of how he drilled his teams into boredom. And now the difference is, for his teams, there's no lack of creativity. And individual brilliancy could still shine. But because he brought the tic-tac football, and I'm not saying he invented it, but he sort of popularized it in the modern day game, that you would watch his teams and get bored. Why? Because they were just too passive. At least that's what he felt. Because usually, in any game of football, you expect a build-up of play, whether it's from the back or whichever sense, that when we reach the opponent's box, our attempt is to go direct to goal and try and score. That's usually the objective. Now, Pep Guardiola's model was that we could pass that ball until even we reach inside the 18 yards box, and then end up passing it backwards until back to our goalkeeper. In other words, we pass you into boredom, into breaking your shape, moving certain pieces like it's a chessboard until we break you and then get a goal. Now, away from that, the advantage in this particular case, while speaking about Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, is that we have seen a very entertaining Mikel Arteta side with this Arsenal side. So it's not like it's historical or it's culture or it's a trend that suddenly that they've been boring for some time, that we should be nitpicking. And when it comes into that Arsenal dressing room, he dealt with whatever he had to deal with. We won't go back into that history of December 2019 when he walks in, and subsequently his first full season. That was 2020-2021, in which they ended up finishing 8th. But particularly when you start from the campaign of 2021-2022, in which they eventually finished 5th, while they were still pursuing the UEFA Champions League slot, which I think they conceded to Tottenham Hotspurs. And I think it was at the hands of Antonio Conte. I stand to be corrected on that. Was it Antonio Conte? No, not Antonio Conte. I certainly do not think so. But we will need to refresh our minds on that, because Tottenham had a swap of managers. Once Mauricio Pochettino exited the club, you had the incoming of Jose Mourinho, and then Jose Mourinho left, and then you had an interim Ray Mason. Then they brought on Nuno Espirito Santo, who was then sacked, and then they brought in they brought in, what's his name? The Napoli manager. His name is eluding me. Formerly at Chelsea. What's his name? Antonio Conte. So in that sort of sense, So yes, I'm trying to get the exact periods, because I think it's very, very crucial to this debate. Very, very crucial to this debate in regards to who the Tottenham managers have been, over the last couple of years. Yes, it was Antonio Conte. Apologies on the network glitch there. Apologies on the internet glitch. I hope it will be better going forward. But yes, so this is the chronology of events in terms of Tottenham Hotspur's managers. When they let go of Mauricio Pochettino, that was, I think, around 2019, the start of the 2019-2020 season. when, of course, it was on the backdrop of them being beaten in the finals of the UEFA Champions League, where Pochettino had taken them. And they sacked him, and then Jose Mourinho comes in. Jose Mourinho holds foot until, I think, around April 2021, when he gets sacked, shortly before the finals of the Carabao Cup. And then Nuno Espirito Santo comes in, having left Wolves at the time. So Santo comes in for a short period of time. I think he was there until November, and then he gets sacked, and then Conte takes over. So it was Conte that guides, Tottenham Hotspurs through that period, to edge it against Arsenal to finish fourth. So in that very season, the 2021-2022 Premier League season, Arsenal were very entertaining. They were very electric. They played some really, really good football. Despite losing 3 consecutive games at the start of the season, they went on this brilliant run. At the end of the season, they had won 22 Premier League games, 7 less of the eventual champions, Manchester City. They had drawn only 3 games, and then they had lost a whopping 13 games. I mean, that's 10 more than the eventual champions, Manchester City. So they were very entertaining, and yeah, but was it bringing the desired results? You would say not, because they did not even qualify for Europe. But you would excuse that. Then we went into the subsequent season, 2022-2023. Okay, played very, very scintillating football, very entertaining football. They lived at the summit of the Premier League table for 248 days. The first team in Premier League history to spend that length of time and still not win the Premiership. They won at the end of the season 26 games, drew 6 games and lost 6. Eventually, Manchester City, who wins 128 games, drew 5, lost 5. And that was a 5-point difference. For those of you that care to remember, in that month, leading up to the title, they lost certain games. I think they lost to Brighton 3-0 or 3-1. In the run-up to that, they lost, was it to West Ham? No. I don't remember correctly who they lost to. But yes, they lost to Brighton by 3-0. Then the other loss came against Tottenham Hotspurs. No, sorry, against Nottingham Forest by 1-0. Yes, that was the other loss. Timothy Awoni scoring in that game. So, but they were very entertaining for a huge chunk of the season, but still fell short. They still fell short, And the one of the things they struggled with is that in that season, they still conceded so many goals. They conceded 43 goals. That was 10 more than the eventual champions, Manchester City. And they still conceded more than Newcastle, who conceded only 33, same as the champions. Yes, they were scoring many goals. They scored as many as 88, but it was not good enough to get them over the line, Now, fast forward the subsequent season, 2023-2024, Manchester City go on to still win the Premier League title, beating Arsenal to the title. I remember when Arsenal returned from that Dubai company, they were electric, only lost 1 game against Aston Villa in the second part of the season. This time around, to the equivalent of what Manchester City had done, they won 28 games, they had scored 91 goals and conceded only 29. That was the lowest of any top flight team in the division. So Manchester City, who are second to them in terms of goals conceded 34. But to the detriment of Arsenal, they lost 2 more games than Manchester City. If they had won those 2 games, they would have clinched the title. So, and particularly, the loss to Aston Villa is what got them down, because they win that one, they finished with 92 points, and the title is theirs. But it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. So, but again, my point is they are playing entertaining football, very, very entertaining football. One that you love to watch. But was it winning football? No, it wasn't winning them anything. As entertaining as it was, Then, last season, they tried to be entertaining, but also, in some cases, they were boring. including losing to Bournemouth by 2-1 towards the tail end of the season, drawing against Crystal Palace, and drawing against Liverpool, which really didn't help. So, yeah, they're just not good enough. Last season we know what the troubles were, but in all their troubles, with or without injuries, win or lose, they were never called boring. In fact, they lost, they sort of won less games last season than in their 2021-2022 Premier League season, because they won 22 games and last season they only won 20. They had a whooping 14 draws. And I've said this before, that the key objective for Arsenal, this is, if you're Mikel Arteta, is look at that table from last season. Look at how many games you won and say, we won 20 games. How many games did we draw? We drew a whooping 14 games. How many games did we lose? We lost 4. The eventual champions equally lost 4, and that was Liverpool. They've already lost 4. That notwithstanding. But you look at those 14 draws and say, how do we convert at least 10 out of those 14 games into victories? That's what they must have looked at, to say, we need to go from 20 Premier League wins and go to and go to 30 Premier League wins. Then that will give us a higher chance to win a title. It's not a guarantee that you win the title, because we've seen teams like Manchester City, teams like Liverpool in their title winning seasons, when they go and win 32 games, and when you win 32 games, do about 3 and lose 3, I mean, the title has been yours, so to speak. Though not always in the case of Liverpool. So they must have looked at that. And one of their key struggles last season was how they struggled against teams that play with a low block, breaking them down to find a goal. And then what those teams basically were doing, they relied on counter-attack football, they relied on set pieces, got the better of Arsenal in some cases, beat them, but in most cases, those games ended in draws. Particularly, you remember the one they lost to West Ham, you remember the one they lost to Newcastle. We're talking about Premier League. And you could see they were not conceding much, but still they were not being called a boring team. Then among their losses was a 2-0 loss to FC Bournemouth, the only team last season to beat them home and away, because they beat them 2-1 and 2-0. So you look at that outlay, and which I'm sure Arsenal minders, the coaches, the backroom staff, whatever, the analysts looked at and said, how do we go past those teams that play in that sort of manner or style? And they realized recruitment was going to be key to that. And that's why they brought in players like Martin Zubimendi, players like Ebelechi Eze, players like Noni Madueke, the striker Victor Gyökeres, in that sort of prospect, because they are looking to break those teams down. Now, fast forward, we come to this season. And in this season, at the moment, they are leading the table. 8 games won out of 10, 1 drawn, and lost only 1. Now, they are being called boring because they are winning games by a marginal 1-0, 2-0, without conceding any shots on targets, at least in some of these games. The reason as to why they're being called boring is that apparently they're not playing that fancy, expansive football. The first question I put forward is, what did they win when they played that style of football over the last 3 seasons? And I make particular reference to the last 3 seasons is because they have come second on the Premier League log twice. They've reached the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League, playing that kind of football. And the season before that, they finished in the quarterfinals, getting knocked out by Bayern Munich, who they play in the fortnight. Actually, in more than a fortnight, after the November international break. So that expansive and fancy football won them nothing. That's for starters. 2, what kind of opponents have they faced in that period? You would say you have Fulham, you have Crystal Palace, you have Burnley, you count Manchester City, you will count who else? West Ham United. Now, unfortunately for Arsenal, or unfortunately for football, is that the manner in which all those teams have set up against Arsenal is sit back. Let me put this question to you guys as well. Between Arsenal and Bournemouth, who has the best attackers in their team? I think the debate there is simple. It will be Arsenal. Then the question will be, why is it that Bournemouth are able to put 3 past Crystal Palace, and vice versa, Crystal Palace being able to put 3 past Bournemouth for them to end in a 3-all draw? And then suddenly you're telling me Arsenal are incapable of scoring 3 goals against Crystal Palace. Why do you think that is the case? Reason being is these teams come, they look at that fixture and say, look, I think when it comes to player quality, when it comes to overall depth and on the look of things, Arsenal are better than us. But while they are better than us, pound for pound, player for player, how do we get an advantage over them? How do we get to beat them? How do we not lose against them? And they say, we'll play with the low block. We'll sit back and look to catch teams on the counter-attack. And we take it from there. So Crystal Palace brought that model. Sit back, play counter-attacking football. That same style, that same model won them the FA Cup last season. You remember they beat Manchester City by 1-0 in the FA Cup final. That same model won them the Community Shield. They beat Liverpool 3-2 on penalties after a 2-all draw in normal time. That same style saw them in the semi-finals of the FA Cup at Wembley, beat 3 against Aston Villa, because sit back, catch your opponent on the counter. Luckily for them, Aston Villa fell for it and they got punished. So what Arsenal told themselves this season, if we come up against a team that is going to play with the low block, we're going to be cautious in how we approach them, in how we drive forward, because we know they are looking to win the ball back deep into their own area where they're defending solidly and then catch us on the counter-attack. So for us to be less vulnerable to a counter-attack, we will manage how we go forward. We will manage how the speed at which we go forward. So they sort of slow down the tempo, pass the ball around. I think it was against Crystal Palace. They did not have a shot on goal until after they have mark. You go back to Manchester City, same story. You had that sort of feeling. You've watched so many games where, apart from the Newcastle game, you've watched a good number of Arsenal games where you know, time simply passes by and you're wondering, oh, it's been 15 minutes and they've not threatened the goalkeeper on the other side. Do they look like they want to win this game? And on first value, it doesn't appear to be the case. But we focus so much on how Arsenal are going about games and forget how the opponents they are facing are setting up against them. God forbid, even Manchester City set up defensively against Arsenal. Why? Because Pep Guardiola realized last season I got humiliated here, losing 5-1. I'm not having that this season. I'll have a change of tactics. He played with the low block, looked to catch Arsenal on the counter-attack. And that's what got them that goal through Erling Haaland. I stand to be corrected, but I think it was Tijani Reinders who provided the assist. So that's how they went about things. So suddenly, people want us to believe that Arsenal are boring because it's their nature, because it's their culture. Their boring nature, present day, has more to do with the opponents that they come up against. If Arsenal were to come up, teams that like Bournemouth, the way teams that play, the way Bournemouth played against Manchester City yesterday, playing that high line, they're going to get beat. They're going to get demolished. Atletico de Madrid tried it in the UEFA Champions League. They got beat 4. Leeds opened up. They got beat 5 by the same Arsenal team. Nottingham Forest did not oversee back. They got beat 3. So why is it that this Arsenal side, is capable of putting 4 past Atletico de Madrid, who are in no sheer comparison with Crystal Palace. Why is it that they can't put 4 past Atletico Madrid, but they can't put more than 1 past Fulham, more than 1 past Crystal Palace, more than 3 past Burnley, which they should have, because Bukayo Saka and others should have taken away some of those chances. Why is it that they can't put more than 2 past West Ham? It's because of how these opponents are setting them up. And it's not us, because if Arsenal open up and play that expansive football and then suddenly get caught on the counter-attack by these teams as they intend to do, then suddenly those same people that are critiquing Arsenal for being boring will be the same people ask, has he not learned his lesson? Where has he been all these 5 years? He knows that these teams are going to play with the low block and catch him on the counter. What is he thinking? Those will be the same people making the reverse argument. It's typical of a lay football fan. So some of these media personalities and analysts and commentators are behaving like lay football fans. Because for a lay football fan, when his team doesn't win, it's always about the manager should have done B and not A. And if the manager does B and they still lose, it is always going to be the manager should have done A and not B. So it's simplistic in argument for argument's sake to look at it that way. And yet you trust that the people that are brought before those screens to scrutinize the game, to analyze the game, or to look beyond the emotions of the game of a fan. You know, I'm all for entertaining football, but I'm all, like I said, if you bring a team in the Premier League and they say, we're going to win all 38 games, we're just winning them 1-0 while being boring, then any team will take that. Why? To mean they take clean sheets, but more importantly, to mean they win the Premier League title. It's that simple. Let me ask, when Arsenal last won the Premier League title in 2004, the things we keep getting, we kept hearing. They completed the season unbeaten. And then they won the Premier League title. Nobody talks about how they played. Like, where did we get into that depth of how they played? You know, all we look at is that they were invincible and they won the championship 3 games to the end of the season. You know, if you ask me, if you ask a football fan, how did Leicester City win the Premier League title in 2016, they will remember less of how they won it than the actual fact that they won it. If you ask somebody, how did Man United win 3 consecutive Premier League titles in 2007, 2008, and 2009, they will remember less of how they did it. They will remember the kinds of players they had. They will remember that the fact that they did win it. Because that's all that counts. That's all that matters at the end of the day. So whether you think Arsenal boring or otherwise, look more on the opponents that they have come up against and how those opponents behave, and then look to the lessons that Arsenal have learned over the last 3-4 years. Let's be honest. Mikel Arteta, like an IT graduate who asks for a marketing job and gets it, they learn on the job. They get to learn on the job. 0 from their class. You know? So basically, but even if you are an IT graduate, being IT, there are very many things you're going to learn on the job. Because in class, possibly, it was theory. Now, you get to do it in practice. So, in theory, Mikel Arteta can play entertaining football. But he's learned that you cannot just go out and play entertaining football. I remember particularly last season, Yemi Karaga said this, and it's something that I'd started to feel when Arsenal were winning some games 1-0 when they started sitting back once they scored that one goal and hoping that they would see out the game, which did not always work. He said that Mikel Arteta is trying to win the Premier League the Jose Mourinho way, and there's no problem with that. And it is true that there is no problem with that. And it is true that Arteta, perhaps in all his consultations, and he said this himself, of how he speaks to very, very many people to have different perspectives of the game, to look at the game, whether he eventually got on a phone call and spoke to Jose Mourinho or whichever manager that you may think of, then clearly he's learned. And like Sir Alex Ferguson said, goals win you games, but defenses win you championships. So he has learned that, one, for us to have a good opportunity at winning this, what we are going to do is be defensively solid, and then against teams that are playing with a low block and mid blocks, teams that are looking to catch us on the counter, what we are going to do is we will find a way to score against them. And once we score, we will try and hold on to that goal. That's why Arsenal have scored more set piece scores than any other team this season. I think it's probably 8 or 9 out of the 18 they've scored. You know, I think 2 penalties among those, one scored by Bukayo Saka and another scored by Victor Gyökeres. You know, so they've come to the realization that it won't matter if we created 10 chances in open play, because we are playing fancy football, and then did not score those chances, but our opponent got a chance the other side and scored, and they won the game. So are they overly drilled? You would argue that case. But as we've seen with modern day football, teams are going down that direction. You look at Brentford, they love it, a long throw in. Coyote has been something. They love a long throw in because it works for them. And like set pieces work for us, no? Not every day, but more often than not, they're thinking, yeah, we have a big bullet in our chamber and we're going to use it. We are going to try and fire it at our opponent. If it catches the target, so be it. If it misses, we'll keep trying again. So they've done that. Tottenham Hotspurs have looked to set pieces to win games this season, and they have won some games. You know, forget their lack of creativity over the weekend against Chelsea. You know, Manchester United, however well drilled they are, they've looked at the way they play, and Ruben Amorim said, yeah, we're going to play the long ball. Look for that defender to head it back in midfield, and that's when we win it back. Or at least our own striker heads it back to our midfielder, and we take it from there. You know? In any case, over the weekend, Manchester United's first goal was a result of a set piece. Their second goal was a result of a defended set piece. The resultant ball falling to Amadou Diallo. His last minute gasset for a winner was a result of a set piece that was well defended. That ball cleared off the lines, literally. So, Bournemouth's only goal against Manchester City was a result of a set piece. How come nobody's talking about that? And by the way, Bournemouth were entertaining, or at least they tried to be. What result did they have? If you believe Manchester United were very entertaining, what result did they get out of the game? A draw. Wouldn't they have rather won 1-0 and walked away with all 3 points? Put it to the Manchester United fans. Look at Tottenham. They were boring and still did not get a result. You know? So let's wait for Sunderland versus Everton, because that game comes up tonight. That game comes up tonight, and we will be really, really looking forward to it. We will be really, really looking forward to it. Like we all know, Sunderland have not been in the top flight in ages. I think you have to go back to 2017 when the last featured in the top flight. 2016, 2017, that season when Chelsea win the Premier League title under Antonio Conte. That's the last time they were there. And over that spell, they won in the last 5 games between Everton and Sunderland. Sunderland won 2 games against Everton, one away at Goodison Park, and then one at home. Everton won 3. So there's been 4 clean sheets out of the last 5 meetings. That was between 2015 and 2017. So clearly, it's that kind of game, but it's been so long when Sunderland were last in the top flight that using some of those results as the benchmark for what's to come to tonight may sound a bit underside, may not give you the perfect reflection. Everton have had a slow start, fairly slow start to the campaign because they only have 3 victories, 2 draws, and 4 losses in their opening 9 games. They would be looking to do better. Sunderland have had 5 victories and 2 draws and 2 losses only. So one of those teams that have lost very, very few games this season. Because when you look on the Premier League globe, you'll find Arsenal have lost 1, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, and Sunderland and Bournemouth are the other teams that have lost 2 games only. And so, yeah, that should tell you everything that you need to know. That this Sunderland side is a very, very tricky one. And when they are playing at home, they are even much, much harder to beat. When they're playing at home, they're even much, much harder to beat. When you look at their last 5 results, of course, they went away and beat up against Chelsea. They beat up against Wolves. They lost to Man United by 2-0. They beat up against Nottingham Forest by 1-0 and shared the spoils with Aston Villa in a 1-1 draw. When you look at some of the opponents they've come up against in the last 5, you're talking about Aston Villa, you're talking about Nottingham Forest of last season, you're talking about Chelsea, and really, it's just impressive to note that they've won 3 games and drawn 1 in the last 5 and lost only 1. In sheer comparison, on the side of Everton, you'll find that they've lost 4. I think. No, they've lost 3 of their last 5 games. Drawn 1 against West Ham 1-1, and their only victory came against Crystal Palace. They needed the late winner in that. And ever since that, they've lost to Manchester City by 2-0. They lost to Tottenham Hotspur by 3-0. In other words, they have not scored. They've not found the back of the net in the last 180 minutes. So David Moyes will be looking to correct that. The Iliman Ndiaye, Jack Grealish, Beto, James McNeil, those are players that should be looking to, change or improve Everton's fortunes going into this game today. Of course, Granit Xhaka will be there to provide leadership to his Sunderland side to make sure that they get all 3 points from today's game. ILFC, I'm back. I joined this morning because school starts back this week. Oh, so you are having a midterm break? Were you having a midterm break, LFC? You joined us at the tail end, almost at the tail end of the podcast. Like I said, take note of the changes in timelines. We've been 2 hours ahead of you, and now that has changed to 3. So as I speak, it's 19 minutes past 10 a.m. Weirdest, it's 19 minutes past 7 a.m. on your side. So that means by the time I started this broadcast, it was 6 a.m. on your side. So please take note of those time changes on your end. But I hope you're doing okay, So like I was saying, Granit Xhaka will be looking forward to providing leadership to to his team and inspire them to another victory. You wouldn't want to be on the backdrop of a brilliant victory against a team like Chelsea, and then you're losing to Everton. When you come up, when you still have the Talawis, I thought they were very, very decent side. Sadiq in that midfield alongside Granit Xhaka, Baldi, and Mukele in defense, Rolfes, Isido leading up the lines, Leafy, very, very good team there. Sunderland, they do have. Lee Brice Regis, for me, it's been quite a surprise package of a manager in as far as this season is concerned. And all kudos goes to him. Then the other guys, allow me to wrap it here and wish you a wonderful rest of a blessed new week and a blessed new month ahead, because I need to run off to some appointments. I have 2 appointments today. One starts is expected to start in the next 39 minutes. Yes. And then after that, I'll be running to another. So allow me to wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Blessed Monday, blessed new week. Do not forget that action coming your way. Of course, we'll be back tonight. We'll discuss the game between Sunderland and Everton. I think will be some form of watch along as we go through other matters. Then the UEFA Champions League will be coming your way. I told you about the Under-17 FIFA World Cup that is going to be played in Qatar starting today until the 27th of November. So look forward to that action for whenever you can find time. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.